time to escape Kabul.
They are desperately trying to get in there because they want to get the gold.
The Taliban are not leaving without the gold. Desperate to pillage the enormous wealth rumored to be contained in the vault, the Taliban are prepared to blast it open. Little do they know, they're about to destroy one of the most precious treasures the world has ever known, Afghanistan's Bactrian gold. 1867, London. It is here that the legend of the Afghan gold is born. Stories of mysterious golden coins from faraway lands emerge among a group of collectors.
When a group of numismatic experts met for dinner, in the course of conversation, one person spoke up and said that that day, a beggar from Central Asia had come around to show him this magnificent gold coin. The man had asked the beggar, what kind of coin is it, how large is it, whose face is on it, and the beggar had simply said, it's a coin that's about this big, it's solid gold. And the numismatic expert immediately dismissed the man. No such coin could exist. No ancient king ever minted a coin of the size that this beggar claimed to have. And so the conversation drifted on to other subjects. And then one of those who was there, a Frenchman, began to think more and more about this great gold coin. He was seized by a fit of numismatic fever and decided, I've got to see this coin for myself. He tracked down this beggar in a ramshackle flat in London and said, I understand you have a magnificent coin, may I see it? And so the beggar took off his great heavy coat. And there, sewn into a leather patch, he pulled out this magnificent gold coin. He was shocked by electricity when he held this magnificent thing, and he immediately convinced himself, this is a genuine artifact of the ancient world, the most magnificent that has ever been found. And he asked the beggar, tell me more about this coin. And then the beggar says, well, 7 of us found it.
Through the ages, the lure of gold has turned friends into killers.
And immediately 5 of us fell dead, and 2 of us survived in the fight to own this coin. The 2 survivors decided that they would toss a coin to decide which one would smuggle this great gold coin to Europe, where it could fetch a high price. Well, the French expert very calmly said, I'll offer you 1,000 pounds for it. The offer stands for 20 minutes. And so for 19.5 minutes, these 2 men stared at each other across this ramshackle flat in London. And finally, the beggar handed over the coin, took his 1,000 pounds, and so the Frenchman acquired one of the magnificent coins of all time.
At 2.5 inches in diameter, weighing more than 169 grams of gold, the Frenchman has just purchased the rarest coin in the world.
Through the coins, you can date who ruled in different regions. So you see that there are many different successive rulers and generals of Greek descent there.
It's a masterpiece. It's very finely carved, minted. It's the biggest gold coin in antiquity, and it was minted by King Eucratides, who was famous. He reigned both in Bactria and in Pakistan.
The coin's discovery is astonishing. King Eucratides is a symbol of what many believe to be Alexander the Great's Greek kingdom of legend, Bactria, ancient Afghanistan's land of 1,000 cities.
According to historical documents, Alexander built approximately 1,000 cities throughout Central Asia, many of those, of course, in Bactria.
The sheer size and weight of this powerfully crafted coin sparks gold fever. The gold coin of Eucratides is the first real evidence of a vast fortune buried beneath the sands of Afghanistan, a fortune that originates with Alexander the Great. Dr. Frank Holt chronicles Alexander's Bactrian pursuits in his book, Into the Land of Bones, Alexander the Great in Afghanistan.
Alexander grew up in a world of military ambition, of heroic ideals and dreams. Persia was an extremely wealthy nation and was quite prized by the Greeks as a land of opportunity in terms of conquest.
In 334 BC, Alexander the Great leaves Macedonia and sets out to conquer the rich and mystical Persian Empire. Over the course of 5 years, his campaign takes him through Eastern Europe, North Africa, and Western Asia. Alexander's military genius brings him many victories until he arrives in Bactria.
Alexander, when he came to the areas currently known as Afghanistan, he had some stiff resistance. Alexander was surprised because no one had actually gone as far as he had gone from the west.
When Alexander reached the city of Bactria, they found a quite shocking sight. Bodies being gnawed by dogs. They began to wonder what kind of barbarism had entrenched itself.
The bodies of those that had come before Alexander lay as a brutal warning to the invaders. But amidst this barbarism, Alexander finds the region's abundance in gold resources too tempting to resist.
The Persian Empire was an extremely wealthy empire which was able to accumulate about 5,000 tons of reserve gold and silver. Much of that gold came from Bactria, at the hub of what would later become the Great Silk Road.
The Silk Road was basically a commerce trade. Trade would come through there from Europe as far as Roman Empire and Greek Empire, and they would end up all the way in China.
If you're in the east, you have to go through Afghanistan to get to the west, and if you're in the west, you have to go through Afghanistan to get to the east.
So all the regions around Bactria that produced gold and silver tended to funnel them in that direction.
Bactria and its gold is controlled by the fierce warlord Bessus. Bessus is a vicious opponent who has rallied the support of surrounding tribes against Alexander.
Bessus claimed the throne of Persia. Alexander claimed that throne for himself, and so there was quite a rivalry between the two.
Alexander hunts for Bessus across the barren Turkestan desert, losing 2,000 troops to the perilous terrain. In the end, Bessus is deceived by his own men in exchange for Alexander's favor once the nomadic leader is defeated.
Several of his strongest lieutenants turned against their general leader, Bessus, betrayed him, arrested him, turned him over to Alexander for punishment. Bessus's nose and ears were cut from his face, as that his body was tied between two bent sapling trees, which sprang upright when the ropes were cut, and therefore ripped Bessus's body apart.
Bloodshed in the name of power and wealth curse the gold and those who seek to possess it. Alexander's conquest continues throughout Bactria.
Alexander always wanted to leave some cultural legacy wherever he went.
Whenever Alexander the Great conquered an area or region, he left a portion of his troops in these areas to build an army base, and they called these bases Alexandria.
Alexander establishes Greco-Bactrian cities, bringing the advanced culture of the West to the primitive lands of Afghanistan.
The Greeks brought in an injection of culture into the region, which really made the region more rich.
The Greeks at that time, they were the most advanced civilization in the world.
His culture got infused with the local culture, not in a top-down approach where it just suffocated the local culture, but it was an infusion in a sense where from the two you get this Greco-Bactrian culture.
Alexander's Greco-Bactrian cities flourish, bringing the gold and riches of the Persian land surrounding them into their kingdom, minting much of it into gold coins, jewelry, and artwork.
So Alexander's period, I mean, they made these beautiful Bactrian coins. You see the face of the general sort of made regional commanders in the area, and they're fantastic pieces.
Alexander's quest for wealth and power drives him beyond the region of Bactria. However, in 323 BC, Alexander is overcome by a mysterious illness. Despite his many victories, Alexander's pursuit for ultimate power and fortune ends in death. Some believe this to be the first example of a curse carried by Afghanistan's Bactrian gold that will be repeated again and again.
After Alexander is defeated, his empire starts to crumble.
The Greco-Bactrian dynasty struggles to exist until cities can no longer ward off competing nomadic tribes.
The last remnants of the Greek kingdom along the Oxus River were attacked and overrun by nomadic invaders from the north.
With defeat imminent, Greeks rushed to bury much of their treasure.
Many of these Greeks hid their treasures for safekeeping, hoping that a better day would soon come and they would come back, retrieve their treasures, and continue on in their way of life. Unfortunately, many of those treasures were not recovered. The people did not return and therefore remained in the ground.
As the Greco-Bactrian kingdom begins to crumble, the fate of one of the world's largest golden treasures becomes threatened. A series of nomadic tribes fights for power over the region.
Bactria was transferred from empire to empire to empire, constantly being dominated and taken over. And when the Kushans came,
The Kushans are an alliance of 5 fierce tribes from Central Asia who band together to dominate Bactria.
When the Kushan people conquered the Greeks in Bactria, they looted everything that they could. They managed to obtain everything that the Greek kings collected over many decades.
The nomadic Kushans pillage and loot some of the finest possessions in the land, massacring the Greeks who dare stand and fight.
those particular nomads loved gold. For them, gold and adorning yourself with these bright jewelry type of stuff was great.
The next 100 years, the Kushan throughout the region and without take those of the Greco-Bactrian kingdom along with them.
What had been great histories, biographies perhaps of ancient Bactrians, all were lost, and Bactria's history simply faded into fable and legend.
Not much was written about it, where we lost a civilization, so there was no viable sources of information about them.
Gradually, the history of Bactria then was largely forgotten.
241 AD. With the collapse of the Kushan Empire, the treasures of Bactria vanish. The quest to find it will be fraught with centuries of death and destruction.